Do you think they need to be paying a higher percentage than other companies?
Forgive me, Neil, I wasn't about to say that they should be paying more tax, rather that they already are, aren't they? Because presumably if they're making additional profits, they are paying more tax through the normal means of tax collection. But that's not enough, is it? Because apparently they're paying more anyway because of the Energy Profits Levy, which I think is a 25% surcharge on these extraordinary profits, as gov.uk describes them. And I believe it's proposed to go up to a 35% additional levy. So they are paying more tax through these extraordinary, again, profits. And when I hear about windfall tax, I first heard of it just over 20 years ago. I think it was proposed in Gordon Brown's era when he was Chancellor, when I think oil prices were up and oil company profits were up. And I remember at the time I got quite a sinking feeling, giving way to a mild depression at the thought of this kind of intervention. And in fact, I wrote a letter to the Daily Mail to protest about it, and I never heard another word about it. Now, I'm not saying I'm responsible for it not being applied 20-odd years ago, but it did suggest to me that it might have been one of these eye-catching initiatives that the governments are so fond of, particularly governments that might be struggling. And if we look back a little further for precedents, I think in 1981 there was a temporary extra tax on banks profiting from high interest rates. 1997, a tax on the increased value of privatised companies. Now, these were new governments at the time, whereas this, of course, is the fag end of a rather listless and tired administration. But it does seem to me that it is politically motivated. And it's not even original, because Labour will probably say they stole the idea, the Conservative government stole the idea from them. So it's a borrowed idea in circumstances that seem to me more about popular measures than any serious attempt to rebalance the economy.
OK. Zachary, let's bring in Ella again here, because, look, we have had a long, cold winter so far, and this cost of living crisis has hit everyone. But there are families out there that really are making that awful choice: do I heat or do I eat? Which is insane in this day and age in our country. The numbers, the figures are enormous, 32 billion. Do you think they should be charged extra tax? Obviously, anyone watching this now, particularly if you're really struggling and paying these enormous bills, which they've all gone up like 3 or 4 times in our households, they're struggling with this, and you see these numbers and it kind of makes you feel sick.
Yeah, but this is capitalism, and this is what happens. It strikes me as sort of, it's not surprising that big business like this is making us happy to make these kind of profits, and you would be waiting all day if you were waiting cap in hand to have some kind of handout from them. It's just not how it works. But there are measures that the government can take. I mean, Zachary mentioned a windfall tax, and obviously that was floated by Labour, taken up then sort of quite quickly by the Conservatives. But the actual amount of money that amounted to was a pittance in terms of trying to solve the issue of people not being able to pay their energy bills. You could do that a little bit more if you want. You could do, there are lots of political decisions that a government could take. Look at France and the way it has nationalised its energy provision with EDF. There are options on the table. But in terms of the long-term issue of not just energy prices, but also energy production, the much bigger question is, what can a government do to provide more and cheaper energy for its citizens? And, neither the Conservatives nor the Labour Party have any kind of exciting plans in relation to nuclear, or indeed, both, but particularly the Labour Party, incredibly cagey about tapping reserves in the North Sea in relation to oil. There is a kind of obsession with green energy, which, I think most people on the planet think that, if you can cook up energy from wind turbines for solar power, brilliant, why not? Let's do it. Any kind of those renewables, let's give it a go. Anything that produces energy is a good thing. But as we know from the long, cold winter, sometimes the wind doesn't blow and sometimes the sun doesn't shine. And I think that's the bigger issue, is what a government's plan is to actually create not just more energy, but energy security, to not be reliant on, for example, energy production from other